honestly, this fight was a lot more exciting than the first one. There was a lot more action the whole way through. There's a little bit of controversy with either an elbow or a headbutt that opened up a big gash, and then of course the ending. Jake he landed a bomb, and so it was, the crowd was going pretty nuts. And then you had some drama in the crowd as well too, with Jorge Masvidal there, Nate Diaz, and then I think the Island Boys at one point got into a fight too. So it was, you had drama on all ends. It was pretty funny and entertaining.
That is awesome. I know, bro. What do you make of the Tyron Woodley versus Jake Paul fights? You get a guy who never really was a boxer, never really a combat athlete, and then he's in there beating a 5-time world champion. What do you attribute that to?
I think what a lot of people don't know is the Paul brothers have grown up athletes as well too. They're either Division I or Division II wrestlers, in Cleveland. And so, part of it is the fact that they're coming into the sport, but they've taken the time to, treat it properly, especially in Jake's case. He's really been training hard for a few years now, and he sets himself up with the right team. So, there was a TikTok event not too long ago. I didn't actually get a chance to watch it, but from what I heard, it just, you can tell when people are actually preparing for a fight properly or not. And I think he just really wants this in regards to Jake. And, he's had consistent training for 3 years. He's like 24 years old right now. He's been an athlete, so he knows what it takes. And then if you see his camp, he's got, $1 million training camp. So when you have all those things working in your favor, then, obviously you can jump to it a little bit quicker. But I would attribute it to the fact that they're athletes. They've got the youth there, and he really wants to be a fighter right now. So
how about the size difference? Does that bother you at all? And like the way he's picking opponents, do you think it's he's calculating kind of his opponents really well?
I would say, yeah, definitely that's a factor. But I think it's also tough because you're like, well, like cruiserweight, who's he going to fight that has a really big name, right? And so he's been going after mixed martial artists, obviously, but there's a lot more. You've got to create some sort of drama, and of course he's a bigger guy because you got Tyrone fighting at 190. I'm not sure what Jake looks like. He probably walks around at like 210, 215.
Yeah, I would say he's like a middleweight, like a guy around my size, or maybe even like 205 to 185 as far as after cutting weight. So the 190 mark is a great weight for him. Tyron Woodley, obviously, he's probably walking around at that weight. And he's a short dude who throws one punch at a time, even in the UFC fights. I think, like, I would love to see him. First of all, I would love to fight him. I think he's all right, but I don't think a guy around his own size he has any chance with. When I watch his boxing, even the first like 4 rounds, I did think Tyron was winning. I thought it was terribly boring. I think it was like one punch clinch, but at least they were kind of going after each other. I would love to see him fight Anderson Silva. I mean, he's calling out all these fighters with UFC contracts. I don't think he's really that. None of those are really going to happen at this point. The UFC would have to get behind it, almost like a Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather type match. But unless you're drawing in, almost $500 million like the Mayweather and Conor McGregor fights were doing, the UFC's not doing that. Because they want to split it. They would split it. But if it's not that type of money, they're not doing it. So wasting our time even talking about Diaz, Masvidal, and whoever, Usman, just a waste of time talking about it. But that's how he's amping himself up, making himself sound like he'll fight anybody. But he's calling out all smaller guys on him. Anderson Silva is not in contract. He's a professional boxer. He's been looking great. He just beat a world champion in his last fight, a former world champion. That's a former world champion boxer. And they're right around the same weight, same size. Like, why aren't we hearing him call Anderson Silva out? I would love to see that.
Excuse me. Yeah. I definitely agree. Anderson is going to be an awesome fight if they were to fight. But again, part of it is the draws. And you're right with Jorge. I'm not sure how many fights he has left on his contract. And I know, Usman, as a champion, that's just not going to happen. Nate only has 1 fight left on his contract. And so, there's a little more potential there, obviously. But, you're right. He's not dumb about the way he's doing it. He's calling out these other fighters. But, there's no real like even yourself, you're a bigger name than any of the cruiserweight boxers that I can think of that would possibly challenge there. And that's part of the game too. I mean, if they got 500,000 buys with Woodley, who's a pretty big name for mixed martial arts, he's obviously trying to beat it from there. And I just can't think again, like, of UFC fighters. UFC fighters at middleweight have a bigger name than a lot of the boxers right now at cruiserweight. That's just a reality. So that's got to play a factor into it. And if I was him, I'd be doing the same thing too, because looking at it in terms of my size, right? Like that's the one advantage he has, even when he's calling Canelo. I mean, Canelo's the greatest boxer in the world, undoubtedly right now, right? And even him, you're like, well, if there's an eventual fight there, Canelo's significantly smaller than him. But yeah, I think it's a few factors. I really don't think, even with Fury's definitely at least the same size as him and walks around. He's a big guy, but
he doesn't look good to me, man. He does not look good to me at all. He is not like people like he's got the name because of Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, I think, is an unbelievable boxer. One of the greatest of all time, I think, at this point. But Tommy Fury is like very amateurish when I'm watching him fight. Like he is not very good. I would take Jake Paul in that fight. I bet he's calling out Conor McGregor. I mean, that's like me calling out Conor McGregor. This guy has fought 145, 155. I know he's fought 170, got swole for it. But at the end of the day, that's who he's calling out, these small dudes. It's like, and then people get behind it, and people aren't even talking about the size differences. No. And of course, the smaller guys, and they're all tough. Like all the fighter, even the 170 pounders he's calling out in the UFC, and Conor McGregor, they're all gonna be ready to fight him, and they all have a chance of beating him. But they're giving up a big advantage. They have a big disadvantage when it comes to size. And I can't stand watching this guy just beat up on these smaller guys, thinking he's the man.
No, I understand. And the funny part is that I think Logan has been built to fight Anderson before. They were talking about it, and it looks like he may or may not fight Tyson now. And I find that funny too, because you got two crossing. You don't want to know. I mean, I think it's funny how there's a route like Jake Paul has to win his fights. That's another thing too, right? Whereas Logan, he's actually been a big draw, and it's like even just to survive against Floyd, where people were like, oh, "That's crazy." And to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of that fight at all, because Logan was so much bigger than Floyd that the discrepancy in skill is really masked there. Like obviously, if you were looking at just points, then Floyd definitely won. But you got a man who's like almost twice the size of you, going against, the arguably one of the greatest again of all time, but he's in his 40s now, and he's, 140, 150 pounds. I don't like to see stuff like that either, but I went to the event. So I say that, yet I still went there. Right. And then complain about it after.
I know it's a spectacle. It's fun to watch. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm cringing even the fact that we've been talking about them for so long, but I'm still interested. I tuned in, I watched, I'm down to see what happens. I can't believe Tyron Woodley got knocked out like that. That was crazy. He faked the body, and just came super hard with that right hand. And that's really, I think that was the way he was going to win that fight. So props to him for making it happen. And damn, Tyron Woodley's going to have to live with that. I seem like they're just comparing him to Ben Askren now, and he's not going to get another chance. Like that's it. I don't know who he's going to fight that would give him the draw and excitement that he would need to like elevate him back to where he would feel, like people would gather behind him and think that he's legit again. I think his legacy has definitely been tarnished, which sucks to say. Thanks for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please let us know in the comments below. Won't Back Down is also available as a podcast, so feel free to give us a follow wherever you get your podcasts.